Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Makkos daf test Zion Makkos 16. Today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim. That's all for the Shvuyim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. So we're going to start on Tez Zion Amid Aleph on 16a, 4 lines from the top. Tez Zion Amid Aleph, 4 lines from the top. Travayo Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda, which says both of them follow according to the position of Rabbi Yehuda. What does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish are having an argument whether or not Hasra Safek is considered to be Hasra, whether if you warn the person before they commit the act, whether that's going to be considered a valid warning if you're not sure if they're going to do the act. So Rish Lakish is of the position that Hasra Safek is not considered a proper warning, whereas Rabbi Yochanan is of the position that Hasras Safek is considered a proper warning. So the Gemara says both Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's not, and Rabbi Yochanan says it is, and Rish Lakish who says it's not. Both of them draw an inference from a teaching and a brisa of Rabbi Yehuda. Travayo aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya says in the brisa, it says about the mitzvah, the prohibition against leaving the Paschal lamb over all night. The Tanya says in the brisa, the verse says you're not allowed to leave the Paschal lamb over till the morning. And in that context, it states, if you leave it over till the morning, you have to burn in the fire. The verse comes along and places the positive commandment to burn it after the prohibition against leaving it over all night. This tells us that you don't get lashes for the prohibition of leaving it over all night. That's the position of Rabbi Yehuda, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yochanan, who says that Hasra Safek is considered Hasra, he was Dayik Hachik. He said, he made the following inference. Taima Deba Kasav, what's the reason why you don't get lashes in this case? Because there's a specific verse. Haloba Kasav, but if it wasn't a specific verse, then if you violate this prohibition, you would get lashes. So we see that even though it's when you warn the person, you don't know if he's going to leave it over till the morning because it has length of time, and yet it's still considered a valid warning. We see from here that Hasra Safek is considered Hasra. Rish Lakish drew the following inference from Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason you don't get lashes? What's the reason you don't get lashes here? Because there's a verse. But if it were not for that verse, Loka, you would get lashes. Even though you're not doing an actual action, you're just doing a passive action by leaving over the meat. So we see from here, you would get lashes for a prohibition without an action associated with it. Rish Lakish Nami Avadei Asra Safek. But what about the fact that Rish Lakish should also notice that this is a case of Hasra Safek? So, who's Savarwaki Idach Tanan Rabbi Yehuda? So we say no, that Rish Lakish must follow Savarwaki Idach Tanan Rabbi Yehuda. He follows a different teaching of Rabbi Yehuda, and that's how he knows. That's how he knows this position. Netanya Hikazev Chazer Hikazev. In a case where a boy was born to one of two men, and one of them was for sure his father, and obviously the other one is not, but he doesn't know which one. So this could happen if a woman marries a man, and then within 3 months she marries another man. She's not supposed to, but if she did it that way, we don't know who the father is. So he kazev chazer he kazer, or kiul zev chazer kiul zev. So if he Rahman struck this man or cursed this man, if it would be his father, he's liable for death. We don't know which one it is. So if he struck one and then he struck the other, he cursed one and then he cursed the other, or if he did them both at the same time, or if he hit both at the same time, or if he cursed both at the same time, chayiv, he's going to be liable for lashes. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Omer bebas achas chayav, if he did it at the same time, he's going to be liable. Potter. But one after the other, it's going to be exempt. So this proves that one after the other is exempt because he must be at the position that Hasra Safek is not considered Hasra. So that's why Rish Lakish is medayik from the other case that we're talking about. It the reason why you would get lashes is because lav she'im bo ma'isa because it's a prohibition without an action. You get lashes, but a Hasra Safek you wouldn't get lashes. Rabbi Yochanan nami avadei lav she'im bo ma'isa. So Rabbi Yochanan, what about the fact that this is a prohibition without an action, and you should have gotten lashes for that? The Gemara says, Savarwaki Hada Amar Rav Idi Bar Avin Amar Rav Amram. No, Reish. Rav Yochanan holds like a different teaching that was said by Rav Idi Bar Avin, name of Rav Amram, and then Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yochanan, Rav Yehuda, Omer Mishum, Rav Yossi Aglili. Oh, good morning, Habs, Boker Tov, a big shkoyach to you. So he says, Kolo Sasi Shabbatorah, Zalav Sheyeshbo, Maisa Lokin Alav. So, Alav Sheimo Maisa ain't Lokin Alav. We're in Tez Zayin and Aleph, 6 lines before they get wide. So there's a statement that Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that any prohibition from the Torah that is a prohibition without an action, you get lashes. But if it's Alav Sheimo Maisa, ain't Lokin Alav. So he has an explicit teaching in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that if it's Alav Sheimo Maisa, ain't Lokin Alav. Therefore, he says the reason why you would have gotten lashes in the first brisa is because it's Asra Safek. And with the exception of, that brisa says, with the exception of Chutz min Nishba Meimar B'Makalas Chavero, B'Shem, that every prohibition without an action, you don't get lashes, with the exception of somebody who swears falsely, somebody who does the prohibition of Tamura, which is exchanging a sacred animal for a non-sacred animal, or one who curses Rahman al-Tzan, his friend, with the name of Hashem. So anyway, we have a kasha to Rabbi Yehuda, to Rabbi Yehuda. So we have a contradictory teaching according to Rabbi Yehuda, because one brisa says that the reason it's a question, it's a difficulty for both Rabbi Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Because in one brisa it makes it sound like Rabbi Yehuda says Lav Shemo Maisa is you get lashes, and the other one says you don't. And the one brisa it says makes it sound like that he says Asra Safek is considered Asra, and the other one it makes it sound like it's not. So how are we going to do this? How do we deal with this? Kasha Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara says Ilo Reish Lakish. Trey Tanai with Rabbi Yehuda. So he says Reish Lakish deals with this by saying there's 2 Tanaim following what Rabbi Yehuda said. Ilo Rabbi Yochanan will kasha. Adi day, Adi Rabbi. So he says no. Rabbi Yochanan would say that one is Rabbi Yehuda himself, and one is his Rabbi. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says that Alav She'emo Maisa you do get lashes for, and that which he says you don't get lashes for it. That's he said in the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Okay, so now we're one line before they get wide. The Gemara's been discussing Alav Hanita Glase, prohibition that can be fixed by a positive commandment after. Normally, you get lashes for a prohibition, but if there's a positive commandment that fixes it, you don't get lashes. And then the Gemara had said that there's 2 ways to approach why you don't get lashes. One is there's 2 ways to say actually how you would get lashes for that. One is kiyem, kiyem, that if the Bezdin would say, okay, now you have to do the positive commandment, and you don't do it, then you would get lashes. And there's another approach that says, no, bita v'lo bita, that you would never get lashes unless you actually took away the entire possibility of getting lashes. So now the Gemara cites the Mishnah, which is actually an R tractate, but it's also in Chulin. It's an R tractate on the next stop, but it's also in Chulin. So it says Tanan Hasam. We learned over there, i.e. in Chulin, Anoto Emal Abanim. So this is the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird before taking the eggs. So let's say you didn't send away the mother bird before taking her babies or her eggs. You just took the mother bird. Some say it means you took the eggs, but let's go with the approach that says you took the mother bird and you didn't send her away. So therefore, that you violate the prohibition. But it's also it says in the verse that you need to send away the mother bird. Shalech to shalech. Do not take the mother. You need to send away the mother. So now we learned there. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda says you don't get lashes, and you don't have to send away the mother bird. You don't get lashes. Excuse me. Rabbi Yehuda says Loke, you get lashes, and you don't send away the mother bird. What's his position? Rashi says. He says when it says you need to send away the mother bird, that means from the outset, don't take the mother, but you should have sent her away beforehand. And so even though it's written after the words, it's not after the verse, do not take the mother, send her away. It's not telling us that if you took her, you can now send her away. It's not a lav hanita klaste, like we've been talking about, where you can fix it, but it's the case where we say a lav shekin muase. It's a prohibition which you which the positive commandment comes beforehand, and that we have learned at the beginning of yesterday's daf that you would get lashes for a lav shekin muaseh. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says on the bottom of Yudalad Beis. And so therefore Rabbi Yehuda, this is consistent with Rabbi Yehuda's position that since the positive commandment came before the negative commandment, you would get lashes in that case. The Chachamim say, no, at this point you could still send her away and you don't get lashes. You can still send her away and you could still get lashes. Why? Excuse me, Chachamim say send her away and you don't get lashes. Rashi explains because he says, when it says shaleach, that when it says send away the mother bird, that is referring to after the fact. You could still do it. And therefore, this is the classic case of a lav hanitach lase. And so therefore, if you send her away, if you took the mother bird without sending her away, you could send her away now. Ze'aklal, kol mitzvos lo saseh sheyesh ba kumaseh, ein chayav olav. And the Chachamim say, this is a general rule. Any prohibition that has a positive commandment that is associated with it, you don't get lashes for it. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein lanu ela zos v'od acheres. Rabbi Yochanan says, we only have this and one more. So, what does that mean? So, says Rabbi Yochanan, we only have this example of that you could send her away and not get lashes, but if you wouldn't send her away, you would get lashes. We only have this type of case and one other. So, what's this? So Rashi explains that Rabbi Yochanan's at the position, as we discussed at the outset of this, bitlo below bitlo, that you would only get lashes if you, in this case, according to the Chachamim, if you took away the possibility of ever sending away the mother bird. And how would that happen? So here means whenever you want, you could send away the mother bird. But when would you get lashes? When you actually killed the mother bird. And then you lost the ability to ever send her away. And that's why he says, we only have this and one other example, meaning to say, even though our Mishnah says this is the general rule, which implies that every prohibition that has a positive commandment is equivalent to this, there's only one actual case where you can lose the ability because you nullify where you can get lashes by a prohibition that's connected to a positive commandment because you lost the ability to ever fulfill this positive commandment, because this is the only case. And let me just say it again in case, first of all, good morning to Jeff and Deborah joining us now. So let me just repeat this again. So we chop this, okay? Basically, the Gemara yesterday was this. Well, let me go back a step. On the bottom of Yudalad Amud Beis, we see that Rabbi Yochanan says the position that if it's a lav shekin muaseh, if it's a prohibition preceded by a positive commandment, you get lashes for that. The Gemara then says that Rabbi Yochanan actually reversed himself from that, so it's a debate whether or not he actually said it. The Gemara didn't actually reach a formal conclusion there. Then the Gemara said, okay, we had this concept of lav hanitach say that if the prohibition can be fixed by a positive commandment, you don't get lashes. And the Gemara on yesterday's daf said that there's a dispute. What does this mean? Does this mean that you would get lashes if the court calls you to come and do the positive commandment and you don't? That's kimu velo kimu. They called you to do it and you don't do it. Or that's one opinion. Or the other opinion is no, even if the court calls you to do it and you don't do it, you don't get lashes unless you actually destroyed the possibility actively of ever fulfilling that positive commandment. And how would you do it? It's called bitlu velo bit. So you destroy that possibility. So now we cite the Mishnah. Gemara says this is the Mishnah that appears on Chulin, but also appears on Daf Yud Zayin. And the Mishnah says, let's say there's a mitzvah to send away the mother bird before you take the eggs or the chicks. And let's say you took the mother bird. You didn't send her away. You took the mother bird while she's sitting on her eggs. So Rabbi Yehuda says you get lashes and you can't send her away, because this is an example, Rashi says, of lav shekin muaseh, because It means you're supposed to first send her away, and then you're supposed to send away the mother bird, and if you don't and not take her. So since you didn't send her away, this was a positive commandment which preceded the prohibition, and so now you get lashes and you can't send her away anymore. Whereas the Chachamim say no, at this point the lava nitakla say. So the Chachamim say at this point you have to send her away, but you don't get lashes because you can fix it. And then the Chachamim say this is the general rule. Any prohibition that has a positive commandment associated with it, you're not liable for it because this is called a lava nitakla say. And Rabbi Yochanan says actually we only have this and one other case. Means say, and Rashi explains what this means is that you can actually actively take away the possibility of ever performing this positive commandment by killing the mother bird. And then you can never do this positive commandment. And so that's why you would get lashes in this case, because Rabbi Yochanan says bitlu v'lo bitlu. And we only have one other example like this in the entire Torah. So when Rabbi Yochanan taught this, Amalei Rabbi Lazar, his student said, Heicha, where is this other example? So Rabbi Yochanan said, Amalei l'chi tishkach. I'm not going to tell you. Go out and find it yourself. I'm your Rebbe, but I'm not going to spoon feed this to you. You go out and find it yourself. So he said he found the brisa that we cited on yesterday's daf, which is the case of the ones, the man who assaults a woman, and he's supposed to remain married to her for his whole life, and he divorces her. Only shegiresh. And Brisa says, Im Yisrael, if he was a regular Jew, machzir ve'ino loka, he can remarry her and he doesn't get lashes. V'im kohen hu loka ve'ino machzir. If he's a kohen, he gets lashes and he doesn't remarry her. Now, hanicho amanda tani kimu v'lo kimu. So according to the one who says that as long as you don't fulfill the mitzvah, the positive commandment, you get lashes. Amanda tani bitlo v'lo bitlo. But according to one who says that you get lashes once you lose the ability to ever fulfill the positive commandment. How is this like shiluch hakan? How's it like sending away the mother bird? We have a case how you can nullify this by the case of the shiluch hakan. Ela ones bitlo v'lo bitlo. But the case of the ones, how can you ever lose the ability? How can you do a positive action that takes away the ability to ever remarry her? If you want to say, well, and where you would get lashes. Well, if you want to say he actually killed her, and so that's how he took away the ability to ever remarry her. No, that wouldn't work. No, if he killed her, he wouldn't get lashes. He would only get death. And so that's not a case of where he would get lashes. So Amar Rav Shimi Michuzana could go in Shekibola Kedusha Me'acher. And basically, he did a positive act to make sure that she can never remarry him. He accepted her betrothal from somebody else. And so that was a positive action. So Amarei Rav Ishi Visa Shliach, if she appointed him to be her agent, then she's the one who did it, and not him. And he lo Visa Shliach, if she didn't appoint him an agent, Kol Kamine, then he can't accept it on her behalf. Kol Kamine Vol Klumi. So how did he nullify it? So could go and Sheidira Barabim. No, he took a vow in public, and a vow in public you can't annul. So he took this vow in public that I'll never remarry her. The verse says, that only works according to the position that said if it's a vow made in public, he can never annul it. That he could still annul it, then he hasn't canceled the ability to remarry her. So Michael Maimer. So the Gemara says the Midira Allah al Das Rabim. No, that he took this vow with the consent of the public. And so therefore he claims, Rashi says, that he found a sin with her, a problem, and that she's prohibited to him. And so he did it with the court, and that everybody says you can't annul. So the Amar Meimer Hilchos Neder Shud Baram Yesh Lo Afara Al Das Rabim Ein Lo Afara. And so he says if it were taken in public, it can never be annulled. On the consent of the public, it can never be annulled. So that's the case where he actually would get lashes, in addition to the case of the Shiluch HaKan, because even though it's a lavanita say, he did a action to take away the possibility of ever fixing the prohibition that he had violated. So we have the case of the Shluch HaKan, and now we have this case of where he took a vow not to remarry the wife who he had married and assaulted. So the Gemara says, V'suleka, there are no other examples. V'aika, and Simon Gezel Mashkan Peh. What about the following case of Gezel? Robbery, the Rahman Amar Lo Tigzel. Torah says you can't steal. Ve'eshes Etzak and you have to return it. So that's a lav hanita class. It is a positive commandment to return the theft. And what about a mashkon, a pledge? The Rahman Amar Lo Tavo Beiso Avot Avoto Hashev Tashivlo Avot Kavo Hashem. Said if you take the pledge from somebody, you're not allowed to come into his house to get it, and you should return it to him once. If you take it, you have to return it once the sun sets. And you could destroy the pledge, and thereby you wouldn't be able to return it. And you could destroy the stolen item, and you wouldn't be able to return it. So therefore, we see that you could nullify in that case. Where it says no, no, since there you would still have to pay the money. We wouldn't give you lashes. We would say just pay back the money you're owed. So well, let's say you stole it from somebody who is a convert, has no heirs, and then they die. You can't return it. So there you have war mevatel. So on top of 16b, the Gemara says no. Awesome, gavra bar tashlumin. There the idea that you have to pay still exists. Gavra bar tashlumin, he has to pay. V'shibuda the ger the kapak. It's just a technical explanation that the convert's not there. He doesn't have the claim to it, but you still owe the money. So the Gemara says, I'll give you another example of where you can nullify it. Ikapeya. What about the obligation to leave over a corner of your field to for the poor? The Rahman Amar Lo Tekaleh Pasavcha, that your Torah says you can't destroy the corner of your field or you can't consume it, that you have to leave it for the poor. Give it to the poor person. Means if you harvested it, now go back and give it to the poor. So it and the mishkachas like the kimavol and bitlo, and you can imagine such an existence where you didn't give it and it's no longer in the field. Meaning to say, let's say you ground it into wheat, and so therefore it's not. And how are you going to give the payout where you turned it into wheat? Mitzvah's payout because we said what's the mitzvah of payout that you have, or maybe this is the Bryce. I'm not sure. They have a little. The Tanya, there's a Bryce. So mitzvah's payout. You're supposed to separate from the standing grain. Well, you didn't separate from the standing grain, separate from the bundles. From the bushel. Until you pile it up. Once you pile it up, you could still tithe it. So we see from here that you can do the mitzvah payah only up until you grind it. But once you grind it, you are mevatel it. So here's another example where you can be mevatel the essay. The rest says no. Kid Rabbi Shmuel. The Rabbi Yochanan is saying, according to Rabbi Shmuel, who says af mafresh min ha'isa. You could even you can even separate it once it was turned into dough. So Marcel says Rabbi Shmuel nami mishkachas the achal isa. But even according to Rabbi Shmuel, you can see it's mevatel if he ate it. So ela zos v'od acheres. So So we say, okay, when Rabbi Yochanan says that the case of the Shluch HaKain, it's only this case of Shluch HaKain and one other, it's referring to the payah. Aval ones lo. But in the case of the ones, that actually can't nullify it. He could always remarry her. Why? Where do we say that if you take a vow al das rabim, you can never revoke it? That's l'dvar rishus. That's for an optional of a dvar mitzvah. But if it's for a mitzvah, like here Rashi says that he is obligated to remarry her, then even if it was done, even if the vow was made al das rabim, yesh lo afara, you can revoke it. Kia, and the Gemara gives an example, interesting case. Kia dahu makri de dardaki. There was a person whose job was to teach the children Torah, the Ave Pasha, Biyanuke, and he made he was poshea on the children. Rashi says he hit them yoter midai. He struck them too much. Some say he killed one. I don't know. In those days, the standard was for teachers to strike. Nowadays, God forbid, a teacher should never, ever, ever strike. But in those days, they used to do it. But this teacher was doing it too much. Some say he just he wasn't a good. He was had other shortcomings as a teacher. That's what the Ritva says. But the Ave Pasha Bianuke. So Adre Rav Acha. So Rav Acha took a vow. It says he's done. Hadre Ravina brought him back. Because he says there's nobody who's as good a teacher as him. He knew how to chop a tosfos. So they brought him back in. But anyway, we see from here, since it was for a mitzvah, then you can nullify a vow that was done al das rabbin. The Gemara says the next case in the Mishnah is that if you eat these food items that are prohibited, the carcasses, the treifa, the bugs, that you get lashes. Amar Rav Yehuda, Haiman the achal beinese debei karba. So if the person eats a worm that was found in a cabbage worm, then malkinan lay, we're going to give him lashes mishum sheret hasharetz al aretz because of the prohibition of violating a sheret. But ahuda achal beinese debei karba v'nagde Rav Yehuda. There was a person who ate this type of worm, and Rav Yehuda gave him lashes. Amar Abaye avo achal potisa. So this is like a marine creature that is a creepy, crawly creature. Well, okay, he's going to get lashes. Arba, he's going to get 4 sets of lashes. 2 because every sheretz you get 2 lashes, and 2 because of sheretz and mayim. That's how Rashi explains it. In the Moa, if you ate an ant, okay, chamesh, you get 5. We're going to say 2 because of a regular sheretz, and 3 because of sheretz hasharetz al aretz, because it's the creepy crawly one. Sira, if it's a hornet, look at sheish, you get 6. 2 because of a regular sheretz, and 3 because it's also a sheretz on the ground, and 1 more because sheret mishum sheretz off, because it's the sheretz that fly. Amar Rav Acha, hamashes nekavav over mishum lo tishaksenu. So now we have another prohibition. It's a dispute whether this is a biblical or rabbinic prohibition. The Makkos Rishonim is a prohibition against doing something disgusting. So somebody who holds himself back from going to the bathroom is in violation of the prohibition of lo tishaksenu. Do not do something disgusting. Amar of Bibi Barabai, Haiman de Shati Bekarne de Umana. There was a person who used to drink from the if a person would drink from the tool that the bloodletters use to get the blood, a disgusting tool, is in violation of this prohibition of do not do something disgusting. So we learned earlier that if you eat an ant, you get 5 sets of lashes. The Gemara says, I'll tell you how you can get 6. Let's say you crushed up this ant in 9 ants, and so therefore you took away their status as a creature. Maybe echad chay, and then you brought one that was alive, and it made them all into an olive-sized amount. Lokesh sheish, you're going to get 6 sets of lashes. Chamesh mishum birya, 5 because of the ant that was alive, and echad mishum kezayis nevela. Now you have a 6th one because you altogether you ate an olive-sized amount of this carcass. Rava Amar Rabbi Yochanan Afilu Shnayim. He says that's not necessarily 9. Even if it was 2 ants that were crushed together and 1 live one, it won't make a kezayis. Yosef Amar Afilu Echad Vehu. Well, please, they're not arguing. One is by a large ant, one is small ant. If you ate the tevel on the meiser rishon, then you get lashes. The tevel is the food before it was tied, and the meiser rishon is the food that's supposed to be eaten only in Jerusalem. Amarav achal tevel shal meiser sheni. Let's say you ate food that was tied with everything except for the meiser sheni, the secondary tithe, which is supposed to be eaten in Jerusalem. Okay, you get lashes for tevel. Come on, ki haitana. It's like the following price of the Tanya. Amar Rabbi Yotzi yachol will yechayev ela al tevel shal hura mimenu kol ikar. Or mimenu truma gdola or mimenu meiser rishon or meiser sheni. Nafil meiser ani. So Rabbi Yotzi says, I might think you're only liable for lashes if you didn't take any tithes, but if you took some of the tithes, then you wouldn't get lashes. But how do I know that's not the case? Even if you didn't just take the tithe for Meiser Sheni or Meiser Arni, that's a tithe for the poor. How do I know you get lashes? I mean, I you can't eat it in your gate. Just like the second verse referring to Meiser Arni. Torah says you can't eat it. So basically, even if you took every tithe except for the tithe for Meiser Sheni or the tithe for Meiser Ani, you would get lashes. So the Gemara is going to take this up in tomorrow's daf, and we'll stop here. Shikaya.